I've got
So,
lots of crackers though.
actually, I'm gonna.
My nose is dribbling behind my mask. It's not pleasant. You do realise I'm filming this for the relatives, including your comments.
If I could ask you to gather around a bit closer, but bearing in mind the need to keep socially distanced for groups and bubbles.
At this difficult time, it's good to see so many of you here today. And on behalf of the family, I want to thank you for coming. Jack died last Friday, aged 82 years. He was at his home with Renee, his wife of 56 years, and his children, Jeremy and Abby. Jack had been ill for several years as a result of a stroke in February 2015. 2 weeks ago, he had another stroke. He died peacefully and without pain. It is expressed in Hebrew, Mot Neshi Ka, death with a kiss. Jack died at the beginning of Sukkot, a harvest festival, very apt for Jack, who loved their beautiful garden in Shotover and its stunning views, and worked in it, often as instructed by Renee. The book of Ecclesiastes is read during this festival. This book puts emphasis on the transitory nature of life, vanity, vanities, all is vanity, reflecting the theme of the Sukkah and of nature. Its theme of death is thought to reflect the autumn of life, the time of year of Sukkot. However, given Jack's love of the piano, both Jack and Renee would also have been amused to note that in 1905, the Yiddish language New York newspaper, Yiddische Tageblatt, reported on a trend in Lower East Side of having a piano in the Sukkah. Jack was a remarkable person and friend. He was a true scholar and teacher, and he was modest. Others will at the right time talk more about his contribution to theoretical physics and as a tutor in Christchurch. But all will agree that he showed great warmth to his friends and colleagues. He was kind and sensitive as a teacher, and he embodied the statement in the Pirkei Avot, "Let the honor of your student be as precious as your own." Sandra and I were married on the same day, June the 21st, 1964, as were Renee and Jack. Jack was a wonderful companion and friend to Renee, and extremely supportive of her career. He was a tolerant and loving father to his children, Jeremy and Abby, and loved his grandchildren, Eli and Sophie. We had a deep friendship with the Paton family. There was so much to admire in both Renee and Jack. They were true friends, like a rock, always welcoming, tolerant of others with different views from their own, and both believed passionately in social justice. Perhaps that is why Jack worked so hard to expand the intake of state school pupils to science degrees in Oxford. When Jack retired, he did voluntary work, first in a primary school, helping children with reading, and then for several years at the Citizens Advice Bureau, organising the project for the elderly. Jack and Renee's home was welcoming, hospitable and invigorating. They were an enlightened and warm part of the Oxford Jewish community. In fact, the family were members of the OJC from the early 70s, and Jack was secretary of the shul for a year in the early 70s. And Sandra and I also recall meeting up with the Paton family at the Weizmann Institute, Rehovot, Israel, when they were on sabbatical in 1976 and 77. Jack was born on the 24th of February 1938, the third son of Solomon, Zalman, and Bessie, Pesha, in Tayport, Fife. His older brothers were spaced 7 years apart, and when Jack was only 2, the oldest went to university. His father was a single country doctor in the town. But Jack's early career was stunning. He went to the primary school in a nearby town by himself, on the train from the age of 5. Later, from Bell Baxter High School, which was a comprehensive, he graduated, dux of the school, and received several scholarships. His undergraduate career at St Andrews University was equally impressive. He graduated first in his class, and then went to Birmingham University to do his PhD under the mentorship of the legendary Sir Rudolph Piles. Jack arrived in Oxford in 1965 from Princeton, where he had been a postdoctoral student. He came under the reverse brain drain scheme and was initially associated with the Rutherford Lab. In 1968, he joined the theoretical physics department in Oxford here as a lecturer. He also started his association with Christchurch at the same time, becoming an official student of the college in 1969, and Dr. Lee's reader in physics, that's a senior tutor in physics, in 1987. He was an inspired and inspiring tutor because he really understood the basic principles of science. Jack was a role model, a true scholar, and passionate and hugely knowledgeable about his subject. I recall in 1984 how he and I had many discussions about the use of physics methods in medicine and biochemistry, much of which I incorporated into the book I was writing at that time. His scientific rigor and intellectual clarity, coupled with his ability to listen, made him an outstanding scholar and teacher. But Jack was a true resource for his pupils. Indeed, many of his pupils followed a path of physics, inspired by Jack's example. His research, too, in elementary particle theory has left an important legacy. In rationalizing the classical, that's a fixed idea, and the quantum, that's the uncertain idea, approaches to fundamental particles, Jack published a seminal work with Hongmo Chan using string theory. String theory is a theory that allows the description of particles in physics. He showed how to associate charged particles with the endpoints of an open string, thus creating the Chan-Paton factors, which are now ubiquitous in string theory. There were other outstanding contributions too for understanding elementary particles, mainly in the field of quantum chemodynamics, of which Jack was a world authority. The Jack Paton room in the new Beecroft Physics Building in Parks Road is named after him, and both Renee and Jack were present at the opening in 2018. The room was funded specifically by one of Jack's former students. Jack had a difficult last few years, but he was a fighter. I recall too how we all did exercises with him to help with restoring movements in the early days of his stroke, and used flashcards to help jog his memory. Jack was always so gentle. 2.5 years ago, Jack was hospitalized with flu and subsequent infections. I recall Renee being told that Jack would not survive after Passover that year, and he was discharged into the wonderful care of Fiona, who has looked after him with great skill and compassion. But it was the love and support and strength of Renee, wonderfully assisted by Fiona and the family, that made Jack's last few years so meaningful and content. What a powerful example to us all of selfless dedication. We shall celebrate and remember Jack's achievements. We shall mourn the loss of a good friend and family man. Jack leaves a good name, which he says in the Pirkei Avot is the greatest crown of all. The flag at Christchurch is currently being flown at half-mast all week as a poignant reminder of Jack. And because of COVID restrictions, there will not be a shiver at his home, but at the appropriate time, there will be a memorial service for Jack. May his memory be for a blessing. Yehi zichrono levracha.
Amen.
Please turn to page 1. As for man, his days are as grass, as the flower of the field so he flourishes. For the wind passed over it and is gone, and the place thereof shall know it no more. But the loving kindness of the Lord is from everlasting to everlasting upon them that fear him, and his righteousness unto their children's children. In the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death. And the dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God who gave it. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside you. My flesh and my heart fails, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. How precious is your loving kindness, O God! And the children of men take refuge under the shadow of your wings. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light do we see light. As we're in the middle of the Festival of Sukkot, we turn now to an alternate psalm, which is on page 4. מכתב לדוד, שמרני אל כי חסיתי בך, עמד לאדוני אדוני אתה, טובתי בא עליך, לקדושים אשר בארץ חמה, בידירי כל חפצי בם. ירבו עצבותם אחרי מחו, ולהצליח נזקיהם מדם, ולשא את שמותם על שפתי. אדוני מנות חלקי וחוסי, אתה תומך גורלי, חבלים נפלו לי בנימים, אף נחלת שפכו עלי. אברך את אדוני אשר יצאני, אף ליהי לילות תזכוני שקלידיותי. שיביתי אדוני לנגד תמיד, כי ממני בא למות, לכן שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי. אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסדך לראות שחת. תודיעני אורך חיים, שבע שמחות אפונך, עמו בימינך נצח. I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand, I shall not be moved. Therefore my heart rejoices and my glory is glad. My flesh also will dwell in safety. For you will not abandon my soul to the grave, neither will you suffer your loving one to see the pit. You will make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand bliss forevermore. We now follow the coffin to the graveside. If you would allow the family to go first, please, behind the coffin.